Grace to you and peace in the name of the triune God, Trinity of love, who made us, who saves us, and who keeps offering us new and surprising experiences, and in whom we live and move and have our being. Amen. Together in this congregation, we have been experimenting in many and various ways, leaning into the scriptural promise that we just read, that God is doing a new thing in each time and place. One of our experiments has been worshiping outside, under this green cathedral of trees. We are concluding our third summer of this experiment, an experiment that has continued because of this congregation's enthusiasm for worshiping in this outdoor cathedral. Yesterday, some of us gathered with another group of prospective new members, supporting them in their discernment about becoming a fuller part of Good Shepherd. And one household shared that their first Sunday here was at Easter Sunday outside. That was in 2021. They said that they were drawn to checking out a church that worshiped outside as we were emerging from COVID. That was Good Shepherd's first time of gathering in person on a Sunday after COVID began. And now that household, these new friends are getting ready to become a fuller part of this congregation. I share that story because it's an example of the gifts of experiments. That is our calling as a congregation on the journey of renewal, to try out new things, to look for God's guidance and action, our God who is a doer of new things. Thank you for your openness to newness as we together seek to be a congregation of the gospel for this time and place, building on both the faithfulness of those who have gone before us and also the experiences of wilderness, to use the language of Isaiah, experiences of challenge and struggle that have deepened the prayers and longing for God to make a way in the wilderness, guiding and stirring up renewal right here as we seek to be faithful to God's guidance in our own day. So today is our last Sunday morning to gather for worship outside for a while. We will gather outside right here for a special 9 a.m. celebration next Sunday. And then worship will begin outside briefly before we all process together inside for 10 a.m. worship. But on this day, as we worship outside one last time for a while, I want to reflect with you about this experience. This summer, we've been keenly aware of the ways that nature teaches us. Creation is full of the glory of God. Today, consider this. As we worship outside, we are an utterly porous community. There are no walls here that keep people from seeing into this gathering. And there are no demarcations that indicate who is in and who is out of this gathered community. There are simply the trees. Are the people standing far off and listening in during this worship time, are they a part of this gathering? Are the people walking by, are they feeling interested? It's an amazing experience of openness for everyone, near and not so near. For me, it feels like the embodiment of the geography, if you will, of the Christian community. A clear, strong center and an unbounded community gathered around that center. The gospel of Jesus Christ is our center. And all are invited to gather around that center, being wherever you are in relation to the center. Spiritually, you might feel rather far from the gospel on any given day, or on your spiritual journey that unfolds year by year, or however you experience your own location as a Christian or as a spiritual person hoping to experience more of the Christian faith and life. I taught mathematics years ago at a junior college, and drawing upon that experience, I love the image of the church as an unbounded set. Clear center, but no circumference that defines in or out. As we have worshiped outside, we have embodied that kind of unbounded set. Nature continues to mentor us. As we heard in a reading today, in nature we find parables for the church, as both the earth and the church seek renewal and health. The unboundedness of outdoor spaces, of this sacred outdoor space, and all the ways we have gathered outside this summer for coffee and conversation, for eco-faith explore gatherings for children, for movies, for our Faith Goes to the Movies sermon series, for an eco-fair, for an eco-concert, for contemplative evening worship. All of these have been opportunities to experience unbounded gatherings, gifts of our commitment to reaching out. To get to inhabit an unbounded space is a gift for our imaginations. Soon we will be gathering inside for Sunday morning worship and for everything. So one of the fundamental questions we might be asking ourselves is, how can we maintain the experience of a porous congregation, an unbounded set where all are invited? How can the walls not become a barrier? Well, this is what I think. The only walls that get in the way, really, are the ones we construct by how we behave. We are the ones who can keep things porous and unbounded. Walls are often experienced by people who never receive an invitation. Walls are experienced by the ways we get turned in on ourselves. Martin Luther and Augustine and others spoke of the default position of being turned in on ourselves, being self-preoccupied rather than focusing outward toward our neighbors and the strangers around us. Luther and Augustine offered that our turned in on ourselves-ness is one definition of sin, a way of life that Jesus calls us beyond for the sake of the world. So how are we going to make sure that the walls we ourselves construct don't become a barrier when we move inside? The only way people are going to be able to see past the physical walls when we move inside is by the invitations we make. Without your invitations to strangers and friends, those walls will be walls of exclusion and barrier. Some of you have heard me mention this before. It's an article that was in the ELCA magazine, Living Lutheran. It was titled, "Why We Will No Longer Be a Welcoming Congregation." You know what it was about? It was a story from a congregation committed to being inviting because simply being welcoming was passive. They didn't want to simply wait for visitors to come inside their walls, and then they'd be friendly and welcoming. So they instead committed to being inviting, reaching out, going out beyond the walls of the church with active invitations and avenues of connecting with the spiritual longings of those all around them. As I've been reflecting on this, a story from the past came back to my memory. My parents were telling me some years ago about their new pastor at their church in Illinois. The pastor had been there for a while, but still seemed rather new to them. And they had a judgment to share. They said, "Well, he isn't getting us many new members." And I said, "Is that his job?" Theirs was a harsh judgment, and certainly something I've heard people say about pastors over the years. What I hear in it is choosing walls over invitations, choosing passivity over a porous church, and sorry to say this about my own loved ones, choosing complaining over shared responsibility. You know the old camp song? "They'll know we are Christians by our love." It's a nice song, but it can sound like, one, Christians are the only ones who know how to care about people, and in our interfaith world, we know that lots of people and faith traditions are grounded in love. And two, depending on what kind of love we're talking about, action in the community with strangers or just friendliness among ourselves, it could sound like others will simply watch how we treat each other with X-ray vision to see us inside our walls, and then they will come. There's a story that you may have once heard called The Rabbi's Gift. It's a wonderful story about how the love we show each other within a faith community can renew a community. I've been thinking about it because you all have been so welcoming in these past months, welcoming of people who are newcomers to church gatherings. Newcomers are expressing such appreciation for the ways they are being welcomed. It is inspiring to hear, so I want to make sure you all hear that. Thank you for being so warmly welcoming of those who show up for the first time or as they continue to be newcomers in this congregation. The Rabbi's Gift is a wonderful story about the observable behavior within a community, and it's been an inspiring story. But behavior within a community is only part of the story. So I'm going to change the story a little bit as I share with you now this version of The Rabbi's Gift. This story concerns a monastery that had fallen upon hard times. Once a great order, as a result of waves of anti-monastic persecution in the 17th and 18th centuries and the rise of secularism in the 19th century, all of its branch houses were lost. And it had become decimated to the extent that there were only 5 monks left in the decaying mother house. The abbot and 4 others, all over 70 in age. Clearly, it was a dying order. In the deep woods surrounding the monastery, there was a little hut that a rabbi from a nearby town occasionally used for prayer and reflection. Through their many years of prayer and contemplation, the old monks had become a bit psychic, so they could always sense when the rabbi was in his hut. "The rabbi is in the woods again," they would whisper to each other. As the abbot agonized over the imminent death of his order, it occurred to him to visit the rabbi in the woods and ask the rabbi if, by some possible chance, he could offer any advice that might save the monastery. The rabbi welcomed the abbot at his hut, but when the abbot explained the purpose of his visit, the rabbi could only commiserate with him. "I know how it is," he explained. "The spirit has gone out of the people. It's the same in my town. Almost no one comes to the synagogue anymore." So the old abbot and the old rabbi wept together. Then they read parts of the Torah and quietly spoke of deep things. The time came when the abbot had to leave. They embraced each other. It's been a wonderful thing that we should meet after all these years, the abbot said. But I have still failed in my purpose for coming here. Is there nothing you can tell me, no piece of advice you can give me that would help me save my dying order? No, I'm sorry, the rabbi responded. I have no advice to give. The only thing I can tell you is that the Messiah is one of you. When the abbot returned to the monastery, his fellow monks gathered around him and asked, well, what did the rabbi say? He couldn't help, the abbot answered. We just wept and read the Torah together. The only thing he did say, just as I was leaving, it was something cryptic, was that the Messiah is one of us. I didn't know what he meant. In the days and weeks and months that followed, the old monks pondered this and wondered whether there was any possible significance to the rabbi's words. The Messiah is one of us? Could he possibly have meant one of us monks here at the monastery? If that's the case, which one? Do you suppose he meant the abbot? Yes, if he meant anyone, he probably meant Father Abbot. He has been our leader for more than a generation. On the other hand, he might have meant Brother Thomas. Certainly, Brother Thomas is a holy man. Everyone knows that Thomas is a man of light. Certainly, however, he could not have meant Brother Elred. Elred gets crotchety at times. But come to think of it, even though he is a thorn in people's sides, when you look back on it, Elred is virtually always right, often very right. Maybe the rabbi meant Brother Elred, but surely not Brother Philip. Philip is so shy, but then almost mysteriously, he has a gift for somehow always being there when you need him. He just magically appears by your side. Maybe Philip is the Messiah. Of course, the rabbi didn't mean me. He couldn't possibly have meant me. I'm just an ordinary person. Yet, supposing he did, supposing I am the Messiah. Oh, God, not me. I couldn't be that much for you, could I? As they contemplated in this manner, the old monks began to treat each other with extraordinary respect, on the off chance that one among them might be the Messiah. And on the off chance that each monk himself might be the Messiah, they began to treat themselves with extraordinary respect. Because the forest in which the monastery was situated was beautiful, it so happened that people still occasionally came to visit, to picnic on its tiny lawn, to wander along some of its paths, even now and then to go into the dilapidated chapel, to meditate, and to join the monks in worship. As they did so, without even being conscious of it, they sensed this aura of extraordinary respect that now began to surround the 5 old monks and seemed to radiate out from them and permeate the atmosphere of the place. There was something strangely attractive, even compelling about it. Hardly knowing why, they began to come back to the monastery more frequently, to picnic, to play, to pray, to worship. They began to bring their friends, to show them this special community. In addition, the monks started going into the city and talking with people in the shops and the coffee shops, at the parks and the health clubs, in the bus station and the bars. The monks met people, talked with these new friends about their lives and their longings, and people learned about the shy monks as they too shared about their own lives. And as these conversations unfolded, people learned that the monastery existed, that it was a spiritual community for everyone. And they felt drawn to the genuine care and spiritual groundedness that the monks shared in these conversations. So, within a few years, the monastery once again became a thriving place for the whole community. And thanks to the rabbi's gift and to the monks' willingness to venture beyond the monastery's walls and grounds, it became a vibrant center of light and spirituality in the realm. May it be so also among us, by God's grace and guidance, forever doing new things among us. Amen.